and lied again. Let me be clear. You are a disgrace to this nation, and you should resign or face impeachment. And every crime, including the murder of Silverio Villegas Gonzalez and...
What you just saw is only the beginning. There's a deeper fracture underneath that exchange, one almost no one caught in the moment. The real question isn't why he said it, but why she couldn't answer. Stay with me, because what's coming shifts everything about what you think this hearing was.
Go with the guy from the gentleman from Illinois is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman and Secretary Noem. I'm glad that you finally made it here. I know you're busy using our tax dollars to trample on the Constitution, to enrich yourself, and to cosplay as law enforcement for your camera crew. We've seen it. You've led the campaign of terror by masked armed criminals in my district in Chicagoland. And around the country, you celebrate the murder of American citizens with the same enthusiasm that you showed when you killed your own puppy. You symbolize the cruelty, corruption, and incompetence of this administration and the Republican go-alongs. Your thugs at DHS brutalize the American people, and you lie and smear victims to cover up these crimes. Let's talk about two examples in my district. On September 12th, an ICE agent murdered Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, who had just dropped off his kids at school as he tried to leave a traffic stop. I said the officer sustained, quote unquote, severe injuries. Sitting there here under oath, do you stand by the claim that the officer was severely injured, yes or no?
I don't know the case you're speaking to specifically.
The whole country knows and you don't know. Let's play the clip of the agent talking about his injuries.
That's knee injury and some lacerations to his hands. Elbow. Nothing major.
What you just heard was the agent himself describing his injuries as quote unquote, nothing major, which means your agency lied to cover up the unjustified murder of Silverio by an ICE agent. Let's talk about Marimar Martinez, a U.S. citizen who was shot 5 times by Border Patrol agent Charles Exum. You were asked about Marimar at yesterday's Senate hearing, and you should be familiar with the case by now. DHS has repeatedly said that Marimar was a quote-unquote domestic terrorist who, quote-unquote, rammed federal agents with her vehicle. Sitting here under oath, do you stand by these claims, yes or no?
Congressman, we've seen a 3,000% increase in.
Do you stand by the claims? You've had an opportunity to look into the case, yes or no?
We have a changing situation on the ground all
yes
the time.
Yes or no? You're familiar with the case. It was brought up yesterday.
I'm familiar with the case.
Let's play the clip and see what we see as evidence.
All right, it's time to get aggressive and get the out, because they're trying to box us in.
Watch out. We're going to make contact and we're boxed in.
We are boxed in.
All right, we're fine now. Fuck it. All right, out of the car.
Be advised, we've been struck. We've been struck.
Get out.
Don't you f***ing move.
The 5 shots that you heard against a U.S. citizen. So the agent said they were going to make contact, rammed their vehicle into Marimar's, immediately lied about it, and then shot her in cold blood. And then DOJ dismissed all charges against her. I wonder why. So once again, DHS lied to cover up its crimes. And this morning, you took back to social media, DHS continued to double down on her and lied again. Let me be clear. You are a disgrace to this nation, and you should resign or face impeachment. And every crime, including the murder of Silverio Villegas Gonzalez and of Marimar, must be fully investigated and prosecuted. But while you are, to borrow a phrase, the worst of DHS secretaries, the agency has been rogue and lawless since its inception in 2002. It was set up to expand surveillance and undermine civil rights by falsely labeling immigrants and protesters as terrorists, as we just saw. That's exactly what it's doing, and exactly why DHS must be dismantled and the immigration system must be rebuilt from the bottom up. That's why Americans all over believe that this agency has gone too far. Mr. Chairman, before I yield back, I request unanimous consent to submit for the record this Fox interview article dated February 5th, 2026, entitled, "More than half of voters think that DHS Secretary Kristi Noem should be removed." And with that, I yield back.
Without objection, Madam Secretary, I have one more, then we'll have to take a break for votes, and we'll come back for a few more members to ask their questions. Gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
What we just watched was not a routine oversight hearing. It was a rare moment where a sitting cabinet secretary, facing direct, specific questions about the conduct of her own department, repeatedly declined to affirm the most basic factual claims that her agency had already made publicly. To understand what actually happened here, it's important to isolate the structure of the exchange. Representative Garca asked two narrow, documentary questions. Each one could be answered with a simple yes or no. Each one referred to statements made by the Department of Homeland Security regarding two separate use-of-force incidents. And in both cases, Secretary Noem avoided confirming the agency's own prior assertions. The first question concerned the ICE shooting of Silvio Villegas Gonzalez. According to the transcript, DACE had previously stated that the officer involved sustained severe injuries. Representative Garca asked if she stood by that claim. Her answer, "I don't know the case you're speaking to specifically," stands in direct conflict with the fact that the incident had been widely publicized in the days leading up to the hearing. No contextual factors were cited, no dates were questioned, and no request for clarification was made. There was simply an assertion of unfamiliarity. The footage played immediately after that answer is significant not because it introduces new facts, but because it highlights the discrepancy. The agent himself described his injuries as nothing major. That was not commentary from the congressman. It was the officer's own characterization. The record, therefore, shows a documented difference between DHS's official public framing and the officer's statement, and Secretary Noem declined to reconcile that difference under oath. The second exchange involved the shooting of Marimar Martinez. Here, the pattern becomes clearer. DACE had previously described Martinez as a domestic terrorist who had rammed federal agents. Representative Garca asked whether Secretary Noem stood by those claims. Again, a direct question. Again, a clear factual predicate. Again, no confirmation. Instead, the answer shifted to generalities, a changing situation on the ground, increases in unspecified activity, broad framing unrelated to the precise allegation. When pressed, she said she was familiar with the case, but still did not affirm the department's previous claims. The body camera footage that followed is what gives the exchange its weight. It shows the agents stating they are going to make contact and that they are boxed in before declaring they had been struck. This matters because the timeline recorded in the footage raises a question whether the agents' own maneuvering contributed to the collision that Dex later described as Martinez ramming them. That is not an emotional interpretation. It is a documented sequence of statements captured on video. Secretary Noem offered no clarification regarding that discrepancy. The significance of her silence is not rhetorical. It is procedural. When an oversight committee attempts to determine whether an agency's public statements match the evidentiary record, an inability or unwillingness to confirm those statements becomes part of the record itself. The transcript reveals that Secretary Noem had been asked about the same incident in a Senate hearing the day before. She therefore had prior notice. Yet when presented with an opportunity to affirm DHS's own characterization, she did not do so. That is not a matter of tone or confrontation. It is a matter of documented exchange. What was not said in this hearing is just as important as what was said. At no point did Secretary Noem offer an alternative explanation for the discrepancies. She did not state that the agency was revising its findings. She did not assert that additional evidence was pending. She did not indicate that an internal investigation was underway. She did not clarify whether the prior DE statements were accurate, outdated, or mistaken. The absence of any such clarification leaves the contradictions unaddressed. It also creates another implication, whether Deuce's initial public framing in both incidents was issued before a full review of the available evidence. The transcript does not answer that question, but it does show that the Secretary avoided addressing it. In both cases, Representative Garca's strategy was straightforward. He used Deuce's own statements as the baseline, not his characterizations of them. He presented footage to highlight inconsistencies, not to introduce new narrative claims. He asked questions that required affirmation or correction, not speculation. The momentum in the exchange came from the fact that each unanswered question compounded the gravity of the next. The broader picture emerging from this hearing is a documented tension between public messaging and on-the-record accountability. When a department characterizes incidents using strong, categorical terms, severe injuries, domestic terrorist, rammed federal agents, those terms carry legal, political, and public safety implications. When those terms are later challenged by video evidence, and when the official responsible for the agency declines to affirm the original claims, it signals a structural problem. Either the initial statements were issued without adequate verification, or the Secretary is unwilling to defend them. Under oath. Neither explanation reflects a stable operational culture. This exchange also underscores another dimension, the role of congressional oversight when executive officials rely on generalized talking points rather than direct answers. Throughout the transcript, when pressed on specifics, Secretary Noem pivoted to broader narratives, increased activity, changing conditions, generalized threats. But those pivots did not address the factual claims that were under scrutiny. That distinction is central. Oversight is not a forum for thematic answers. It is a forum for factual accountability. The record shows that when confronted with two clear discrepancies between DHS's public statements and the available evidence, Secretary Noem did not provide clarification, justification, or correction. She neither affirmed the original claims nor withdrew them. She left them suspended, unaddressed. In an oversight context, that is not a neutral omission. It becomes part of the evidentiary trail. What this means going forward is that both incidents, the ICE shooting and the Border Patrol shooting, now sit in a different posture. They are no longer solely questions of use of force policy. They are questions of agency transparency. When the official leading the department declines to stand by her agency's own words, investigators, lawmakers, and the public are left to interpret the silence. And silence in this context carries weight. There is also a deeper institutional implication, whether DHS's structural incentives encourage premature or exaggerated public framing of incidents involving lethal force. The hearing raises that possibility without resolving it. The body camera footage suggests a mismatch between on-scene reality and post-incident characterization. The transcript suggests an unwillingness to defend that characterization under oath. The combination of those two factors invites further inquiry. It is also notable that Representative Garca ended by pointing to broader systemic issues within DHS. While those are political assessments rather than factual claims, they contextualize why the specific discrepancies matter. When an agency exercises expansive enforcement powers, accuracy in public communication is not simply a matter of public relations. It is a matter of civil rights, legal accountability, and public trust. The final procedural point is this. No clarification was offered. None was attempted. The Secretary's statements did not contradict Representative Garca's presentation of the video evidence, but they also did not support DHS's prior characterizations. This unresolved gap is now part of the official oversight record. The verdict from the transcript is clear. Representative Garca controlled the exchange not through volume or rhetoric, but through documentation. Secretary Noem ceded control not through emotional reaction, but through refusal to speak to the factual predicates presented to her. When you strip away the confrontation, the pattern is not subtle. Two incidents. Two public DH claims. Two pieces of contradictory evidence. Two direct questions. Two refusals to stand by the agency's own words. That is what the hearing showed. And that is why this exchange will matter long after the headlines